Hello there. Thoughtfulness, mindfulness, these are the things that come to my mind when I think about today's subject on Live and Thrive. I'm Yemi C, and Tony is here with me to talk about critical thinking. So, Tony, what is critical thinking?
Hey, folks, good to be here. I'm going to start with a quote from Mary Martin, and it says we should stop wishful thinking and start thoughtful wishes. While you're thinking about that, I'll go on to define what thinking is, then we'll drill into what makes it critical. Thinking is a mental activity with which we produce and manipulate ideas, we weigh options, and make judgments. An average person will think maybe 50,000 thoughts in a day. Roughly half of your waking hours is spent thinking. And it's done automatically. We decide what to do, we evaluate facts, decide what is true or false, what action to take. And this requires billions of new connections of neurons in our brains. But if you think naturally, natively, should I say, you are likely to be selective, skewed, ignorant, or just plain prejudiced. And meanwhile, it's this thinking that determines the quality of our life. So if you're not putting effort into it, it could really mean that we lose value, our quality of life is reduced. So clearly, we need to find a way of thinking better.
Wow, thank you. So everyone thinks, but then it's the quality of our thinking that determines the quality of our very existence. So what forms and informs our thinking process?
Well, let's start by looking at the ways in which we think. The first mode is what I'll call convergent or deductive reasoning, where there's only one solution to a problem we are facing. For example, if you have a round hole and you're trying to get the right peg to fit in it, you can't bring a triangular peg or a square peg. There's only one peg that will work, and that will be the round one. So that is a type of thinking. But then there are also other times where we need to think from inside out. This is also called inductive reasoning, where when you observe something, you can make general observations across many disciplines. For example, if you gave, say, 10 pieces of Lego bricks to 10 kids and tell them to make anything they like, you're likely to get 10 different results. So in such a way, we have what they call divergent, inductive, or even you can call it synthetic thinking. There's also some other types of thinking that combine these two when we're trying to create a solution for a particular problem, which is where we now talk about things like creative thinking. We're trying to build something new, something that has never been done before. So you're working from a different premise or looking for new relationships between existing items, or to interpret the nature of things. We keep discovering new ways of doing all these things. So those essentially are the ways in which we put our thought processes together.
Okay. So thinking is not as simple and basic as we might have assumed. There seems to be a level of creativity, uniqueness, and technicality in the way we think. Tony, could you explain to us the core of critical thinking?
Now we are getting to the brass tacks. Critical thinking involves objective, mark that word, objective, analysis and evaluation of whatever the issue is in order to form a judgment. So you are looking at a thing objectively, analyzing it, and coming out with the right output. So usually what we try to do when we're thinking critically is to first understand the linkage connections between different ideas, determine how important they are, look out for inconsistencies and errors, use a systematic approach in doing this, in a consistent way, and reflect on justification for our assumptions, our beliefs and values. Because one of the things, if you check out our video on values, you still need to reflect on your values, because you might be getting it wrong, even if you think, okay, I'm going to be a honest person, but in this situation, if I told the truth, they're going to put this guy to death. Should I tell the truth? So there are also dilemmas that we assess when we're using critical thinking. But wherever the outcome of what issue we're addressing is very significant, I will advise that we use critical thinking, not just mindlessly or thoughtlessly take an action or make a decision without evaluating all the facts, see how important they are, how relevant they are in the scheme of things before making that conclusion.
Wow. Clearly, critical thinking informs our decisions. You need to watch our video on decision making as well. And it's very critical to our success and the achievement of our goals. So, what more do we need to know about critical thinking in relation to goals, achievement, and fulfillment of purpose, which is what we are all about on this channel?
Yes, many methodologies are available for us to critically examine whatever situation we're in. So I'm going to look at some of them to just broaden our horizon, because there are so many tools out there. I can only just bring out a few because they struck me as being very interesting and something that you can readily apply to your situation. The first one is lateral thinking. In lateral thinking, you are looking at the same problem from different perspectives. There's the classic story of blind people touching an elephant and being asked to tell what it is. Somebody was touching the leg and said, hey, this must be a tree. Another person was touching the trunk and said, this is some kind of rope. So using multiple views in assessing a situation helps us to make better decisions. Another one is what I call strategic thinking. When you're thinking strategically, you're not looking at the immediate results of what your decision or action is. You are taking a longer term view. You are looking at consequences. You are assessing vulnerabilities so that your decision is very well rounded and grounded, if I can put it that way. Then there's what I'll call systems thinking. A systems thinker will look at what his decision is going to affect, how his decision will affect the overall system. So let us look at, say, a car, for example. If you're trying to fix, say, the braking system, you don't just look at the brakes. You start thinking about, okay, so how does it affect the tires? How does it affect the engine? How does it affect, other things? Because that way, you now have a deeper understanding of what the issue you are assessing is. And lately, there's been a resurgence of what I call design thinking. In design thinking, you are looking at how to solve problems from the user's perspective. How is the person who is going to benefit from this thing we are doing going to see what we are doing for him? So if you're making, say, a phone, for example, you are not thinking of, let's put all these features inside. What you are thinking of is, how will the user feel when he holds our phone? How easy will it be for him to do all the things he wants to do with our phone? So that kind of thinking also helps us to critically assess whatever decision or action we want to take. There's also what I call emotional reasoning. In fact, this is probably the most critical element that we need to guard ourselves against. And that's why I brought it up. In emotional reasoning, we look at the way we feel as evidence of the correctness of whatever it is we're doing, even if it doesn't make any sense. An example is maybe you did something and you feel guilty about it, and you conclude that that must be the wrong thing to do because you feel guilty. It's probably the right thing to do if you logically assess everything. But many of us use this kind of reasoning when we are doing things. And through that error, we tend to miss the point and not achieve our goals. So I'll also conclude with something I feel we should also think about seriously. There is a whole concept of what I call thought experiments. So a thought experiment is, I mean, I'm sure you understand what an experiment is. You try something out and see what the result is. But in a thought experiment, you are trying it out in your head. So what you are doing is, if you be thinking and imagining, if I did this, what will happen? So this is a very good way of critically thinking about issues before us, and it helps us to make good decisions at the end of the day.
Thank you. Now I see critical thinking is beyond thoughtfulness. It is thinking in a structured way. So why is it so important to possess this skill?
Well, it's fairly straightforward. I don't need to repeat this too many times. But like I said, most of the time when you do things with critical thought, you are organized, you're planning, reflecting, and creating in a structured way. And it leads to positive outcomes in both our private, personal, and professional lives. These are the real benefits, if I can just list them out, among others. You make better decisions. It's now easier for you to achieve your goals. And you have success more likely in the areas of business, of finance, or even better career outcomes. You make better choices in the course of which careers you take, what sort of steps you do, how you build yourself in that area. And, you solve problems far more easily. We talked about problem solving in one of our other videos, which you can look at. So you are a better problem solver because you're thinking more critically. You also learn to become a learner. Because one of the things about us is no matter how much we know, we don't know enough. So having that learning mindset, that curiosity is part of the input to good critical thinking. And that is a very good thing to develop. And a good thinker always ends up developing better relationships because they will have thought through how they are going to react and relate to their counterparties.
Wow. Do we all need this skill or what? So, Tony, please, how can I improve my skill of critical thinking?
Well, don't forget that already you are thinking. So the only way you think better or more critically is first start with a re-evaluation of the goals you have set for yourself. Because there are times you are trying to achieve the wrong things. But critical thoughts now helps you to, okay, so this thing I'm trying to achieve, does it make any sense? Will it help me in achieving my overall purpose? Which we also talked about, purpose. Another thing, like I said, is to have a questioning, a curious mind. You must always research. Everything, there's a lot of change going on in the world. So the way you know it today may not actually be effective tomorrow. So you have to keep researching. Then it is very crucial for us to consider multiple points of view Don't just think, okay, I think I have it. This is the only way it goes. There might be a better way still. Deal with your biases. Am I prejudiced here? Do I think those people from the other side are likely to not do a good job? That way you miss the opportunity of partnering with somebody from the other side. And that might be the best partner for you in that particular moment. So you have to examine your biases. There are so many biases we have, cognitive bias, and all those. There are times when something we believe happens, we say, I know normally that's supposed to happen. It might just be a one in multiple chance situations that just happen. So we have to also be ready to look at our prejudices and biases, because if we leave them in there, we're not likely to think critically. Always consider consequences and implications of what we are thinking. What will this thing result in? How will it affect the overall goal? And on a final note, always break things down into simple tasks. So if you have to build a car, I'll probably start by thinking, okay, so what sort of engine do I want it to have? Do I want it to have an electric engine, a hybrid engine, a hydrogen engine, a fossil fuel engine? So all those, I've not designed a car yet, but I'm already breaking it down to the basic. So once I solve the engine problem, I can now go on to the next level. Do I want it to be a luxury car, a compact car, and all that and all that? So by the time you break a problem down into simpler things, you see that you are solving each one. Then using systems thinking, you bring it all together at the end of the day. So that if you take those basic tips, you're likely to be a better thinker and, of course, more likely to achieve your results. So on that note, I'm going to close with a quote from Shane Parrish, which says, the best thinking is rethinking. So I enjoin you to always remember your ABC. Always be committed. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. The best thinking is rethinking. Keep an open mind. You really don't know everything. After all, it is said that today's excellence is tomorrow's mediocrity. But I find this quote by Nevenka Inks really intriguing. And it says, two broad-minded aliens can always be happier together than two narrow-minded acquaintances. Amazing time here again today. Please look up our other videos on our YouTube channel, Live and Thrive. Like, comment, subscribe, and do share. Until we see again in another video, have a nice one.